Welcome to Charts Today. My name's David Linton, and today's edition for Friday, the 6th of April, comes to you from London. And we start as always by looking at the dollar. The dollar actually just continuing to strengthen, was up again yesterday. So we are on this continued short-term uptrend, not managing to break to new highs, some 3-month highs we're looking at, but getting close, and we see that on the weekly chart. So the dollar looking stronger than it has for a while, but still not quite into a bullish trend. And if we look at the euro, of course, the euro just sinking lower on that stronger dollar. So euro dollar just falling, just testing new lows there over the last week or so. Japanese yen, we see the dollar strength really showing through here, but more work to do in the medium term as well. Against sterling, we see sterling actually falling back against the dollar. That dollar strength just dominating as well. And if we look at the forex chart for sterling euro, we see here that sterling is falling back too. And against the Swiss franc, sterling has looked strong of late, but again, it's just coming back now off the top. Against the Australian dollar, sterling just falling away back into bearish territory, Australian dollar going up in sympathy with the US dollar. Bitcoin down another 3% this morning, heading to this $6,500 level. The interesting thing will be, can we take out the lows that we've seen recently? Certainly the early April low that we saw just below 6,500, and then the February lows. So we have got these downside targets. We've got a target here to 6,304. That's 3.8% downside. So it's still bearish for Bitcoin. Taking a look at US stock markets, we see the S&P 500 index is up again yesterday, just struggling to get back into bullish territory on the short-term chart. And if we look at the Nasdaq 100, much the same here. In fact, I tweeted yesterday that the markets are now looking more bullish in the short term but bearish in the medium term, whereas before we were looking bullish in the medium term and bearish in the short term. That means that the picture is reversing, and so longer term this picture is getting worse, but shorter term it's getting better, and that's always the way of resolving the trends. So I don't expect this short term recovery to be long-lived. But it would be interesting to see if we can get back above the cloud on the medium-term chart. We see this really showing up on the Dow Jones index here. We've got a new upside target, but it's not yet activated. If Dow does go higher, that would be 9% upside. That would be significant. If we look at the Russell 2000 index, it just shows that the recovery that we've seen in the last few days is fairly broad-based, but the sell-off is also broad-based, so no real position there. And the volatility continues. We're looking at the future, the S&P future down 0.75% this morning. Trump's renewed comments on the trade war driving markets lower. And if we look at the Nasdaq E-mini, we're down nearly 1%. So it does look like the US market's going to open lower, seesawing lower. This volatility has really kicked in as a result of breaking these trends. And if we look at the FTSE 100, we see here again that we were up yesterday quite strongly, a good 2% up. But again, this is only short-term recovery, and we've got a lot of work to do to get back into bullish territory on the medium term. Got to get back above 7,340 really to break that cloud level. Looking at the FTSE 250, it's also turned short-term bullish, but it has work to do to get back into that territory on the medium-term chart. The DAX, very similar picture, looking bullish yesterday, but don't be surprised to start seeing these markets unwinding some of these gains, especially with those US futures outlook, and the CAC Current much the same. So we're seeing very high short-term volatility, a lot of fear and greed in these markets. Is this a buying opportunity, or is this the beginning of a new bear market? And we're seeing here Japan was off 1/3%. Hang Seng was down quite a lot yesterday. Today it has actually recovered a bit of that loss, but it is bearish short term, and even the Hang Seng, which was looking among the most bullish of the markets, is turning now bearish in the medium term chart. China was off very slightly overnight, and it's still looking pretty bearish on the medium and short-term charts. And if we look at the Sensex, the Indian market, also just struggling here, looking a bit better on the short-term chart, having still open at the moment, but looking medium-term bearish. So the Sensex is holding up short-term better than some of the other markets. And the Australian market really looking quite dire, both on the medium and short-term charts, so not looking great. If we take a look at Brent crude, selling off again, just sitting at this 67.79 level now, so still bearish below the cloud on the short-term chart, some downside targets here. So we are just seeing that failure to make a new high is starting to have we can see it here very clearly on the weekly chart, and especially on the lagging line, is having a little bit of an effect on the price of crude, and the same with WTI. US nat gas sitting in the doldrums at $2.68. If we take a look at gold, gold is sitting in the mid 1320s. Interestingly, we're just heading a bit lower again this morning. We've got a new downside target, but not yet activated. And what's interesting is we've got this upside target that was given a few days ago. We'd have to move below 1320 to deactivate that target, so watch out for that. So interesting picture here with gold. And if we take a look at the US 10-year yield, we see sitting at 2.82%. We have got some new upside targets, 2.9, 2.99. That's really nudging that 3 level again. So it'll be interesting to see if bond yields get to that level. Just taking a look at some of the tech majors, they're all up fairly strongly yesterday. Apple was up, Amazon was up nearly 3%, having had some very big sell-offs. Of course, we've seen Amazon down as much as 5% of the day. Still struggling to get into short-term bullish charts. And if you remember, most of the indices we've been looking at have been in short-term bullish mode. So it's interesting that the tech majors, here we see Google, the tech majors struggling to get into that short-term bull mode. So that is what's hanging over the market at the moment still, and tech is still looking relatively weak. And of course, this is what drove markets higher last year. We're now seeing tech being the weak spot in markets, and so that will be the thing to watch. These tech charts are actually really important for the overall market position. And we're seeing here Microsoft, one of the stronger looking charts, so that's quite interesting. That's it for today. Have a great weekend. Until Monday, happy charting. See you then.